Okay, let's kick off. Good morning. My name is Peter Carter. I'm from GS1 Australia, and it's my pleasure today to introduce the Squizz team and to host this interactive seminar. The session is being recorded, so those of you who've just dialed in, there'll be copies of the session available later. We've got a small but really exciting group of attendees today representing a range of organisations across Australia. GS1 Australia is delighted to have Squizz join the Alliance Partner community, focusing on supporting GS1 membership across Australia with innovative concepts around supply chains. So for those of you who are not aware, GS1 really is a global language of business. We're well known for our barcodes and our technology for on-pack identifiers, but there's a very rich language and international infrastructure in place that makes global supply chains work efficiently. Our current focus is on resilience, as many of us have been managing our way through this pandemic. This session today is all about automation. It's about accelerated procurement and intelligent automation. A lot of big words there. I want to tell you a little bit about Squizz before I hand over to your presenter this morning. So I met Glenn and the team about 6 months ago, and I was curious. I was, what are these interesting guys doing? They've got an interesting pedigree and background, very technical and very innovative. And I'm genuinely excited with what they're doing. This notion of closed systems and trusted communities is a really emerging theme across international supply chains. And there's a real need for innovation and for people to set the pace and to show what's possible. So before I hand over and provide an introduction to Glenn, just a couple of house rules. First thing is we've got the chat box open today. So if you do have a question that you'd like to put to the panel, please, down the bottom of the screen, you'll see the chat box. Also, feel free to use the Q&A. So I'm sure you've been doing lots of Zooming and web conferencing in recent times. So if you do have some comments or any other questions that you want to put down, use the Q&A function. The team will try and get back with as many questions as possible. And last thing I will say is GS1 doesn't endorse or sponsor any of our Alliance Partner solutions. However, we're always happy to shed light on great innovative ideas. So with that, I'd like to invite Glenn Drew to turn his camera on. Now, Glenn's the CEO of Squizz. He's a passionate innovator, and he's really committed to bringing on some game-changing changes in supply chains. So I'm really interested to hear the presentation today. When he's done, we're going to stop and we're going to open up to some panel conversations. So with that, Glenn, thank you for the opportunity, and over to you.
Thanks, Peter. Really appreciate it. It's such a pleasure to present to the GS1 community, and also to those who have joined us through other networks and introductions, and very excited and looking forward to getting into this with you. So we won't sort of dilly-dally. Let's progress. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my world, and it'll allow you to get to know me. And the first thing about what we're trying to achieve in our businesses is really we want to enrich the world through the circles of connections that you trust. And it's not the circle of connections that I trust. I have my own circle of connections. You have your circle of connections. And when we create a trusted community, then great things can happen. And hopefully you'll get a sense of that as we progress through this presentation, just what is possible and capable through our key concepts around connected commerce. Let's have a look at a snapshot of my world. So here I am as myself, and I'm married to my beloved wife Anna, and I'm a brother of Rowan, and I'm also part of a bunch of clubs. So I'm a member of a ski club, and I'm a member of the Essendon Football Club, and I'm a trustee of my self-managed super fund. So that's my personal world. And then in my business world, I'm the CEO of two companies, Totex, which effectively does integrated e-commerce websites, and I've been doing that since I was 20 years old, so it's 20 years ago. And Squizz, which is a platform that's been 15 years in the making. So I'm also wanting to draw your attention to the fact that my network, as your network, operates this way, is that the company that you work with is then connected to other companies. So Squizz has a client and Totex has a client called Hollyoak. Hollyoak Industries has a national sales manager, Andrew Craik, and Andrew is also a good mate because we go skiing. Then if we look further afield, Hollyoak is part of the mechanical services marketplace. And inside that, they have got some clients, so AG Coombs and All-Star. And then they're also part of an industry initiative called the AMCA, which is effectively a policy framework and governance framework for the industry. And then AG Coombs is also, a client of Reece Plumbing, and Reece Plumbing sells to thousands of other businesses. And these guys then service the builders out there, that are building buildings. So Lendlease is one of those guys. And, back at Hollyoak, they've got a manufacturing plant. They make air grills, air grills that, you see in the roof and ceilings of most buildings. Well, in their manufacturing plant, they need safety gear. So they would buy that out through the safety marketplace. And when they ship these goods around, they need to use some smart tools. So Smart Freight is connected into some of these companies as well. And you can see here, this is a microcosm of my connected network. If I actually put in all the people that I know, it's quite massive. So this is just to really illustrate some really key different differentiators here. I have a personal world, I have a business world, I have people that I'm connected to. I'm part of companies, and my companies are connected to other companies. And this is fairly much a natural commercial ecosystem that we operate in all day, every day. So to do what I need to do every day, I have to use a sea of digital tools, and everything from, you see all these icons here, they're no doubt that you're using some of these tools. But probably one thing that is starting to get a little bit trying is that I have to have emails and logins for all these different systems and platforms to get my work done. And when I'm in these different systems and platforms, they've all got different workflows and things that I have to learn to use them. So now what I'd like you to do is have a look at these and think about this for your own world, and have a think about how many tools do you log into, in the morning or during your day, and just try and sort of brainstorm that a little bit. The questions are there for you to answer, and you might actually shock yourself just how much websites and apps and things that you actually log into or tap into every day. And just as everyone finishes their polling, we'll just present the results when we're ready. So the point here is that it's not a bad thing that we log into all these things. They're quite liberating. But okay, you can see that there. That's kind of what I expect. Up to about 20 tools that we're logging into every day. It's not a bad thing that we're doing that, but it does actually get a little bit fatiguing. So let's move on to the next section. Okay, so effectively, the internet's liberated us from the shackles of the manual world, because that's why we're using our apps. That's why we really, love our phones and our laptops and all that sort of stuff. But we're now sort of getting shackled a bit to the digital world, and that's the digital world is captivating our attention, and it's very addictive. But there's some shackles around digital tools, and how can we liberate ourselves from those shackles? Well, let's get into looking at that problem. So today I'm going to cover the evolution of online commerce. You know, where have we come from? I'll cover off a lot of my own experience in e-commerce, and also show us how we're trajecting through the current state of play, and then towards what we define as connected commerce, which ties into working from anywhere. And then also, what is the actual future looking like, and how does that impact supply chains? So let's go. Okay, the evolution of online commerce started out with manual buying and selling. In fact, when I started doing computer science engineering 20 years ago, I went into a lot of businesses. I was doing IT consulting work as well at the time. And I saw a lot of manual buying and selling. I saw lots of showrooms. I've visited lots of retail outlets. And this is basically a proven and tested methodology for buying and selling. Now, the workflow for manual buying and selling is pretty straightforward. You rock up to the store, you ask for what you're looking for, you do some browsing around the store. You might need to go and say how much for this, or do you have that? And then ultimately you arrive at the counter, they scan items in a B2B sense. They might raise an order, create a quote. You might need to take it back to your workplace and get a purchase order number raised or whatever, and then push it through. And then at the end of the process, you walk out with the goods. That's a very typical manual buying and selling process. But as businesses and distributors sort of wanted to sell more, they wanted to harness better tools, digital tools if they could. So the next level that businesses went to was message-based ordering, and that was very prevalent when I started my career. Emails, faxes. In fact, one of the companies I visited that turned out to be one of our big clients had a fax room. They had 24 faxes, and they were continuously receiving fax orders non-stop. And that's a great method in one sense, but as we see in the workflow, message-based ordering, is still a lot of manual effort. You basically, instead of going into store, the supplier often sends unpriced catalogs out to their customers. Then the customer will fill out a quote request and, fax or email that through, or they'll raise a purchase order in their own system. And then eventually it works its way through an approvals process, and the goods are shipped. And message-based ordering is still very prevalent, but it's got some limitations. And the key limitations is mistakes. There's mistakes that are made in the ordering process, where incorrect product data, or someone's put a fax order, an email order through, and they've miskeyed the product code. And I've seen some dramatic outcomes of that. And there's mistakes on the supplier side. They rekey the order into their ERP system. They get something wrong over there. And then there's mistakes in the approvals process. And then there's mistakes down in the shipment of goods. So message-based ordering is sort of prone to all of these possible errors. And this happens in everyday commerce. So suppliers started thinking, well, how do we eliminate the mistakes on our side? So naturally, where I started my career is some of those suppliers said, Glenn, we want to go build online websites. How do we sell online? And that introduced some new challenges, because building B2B integrated e-commerce websites introduces issues like pricing and price relationships and different pricing matrices and tender contracts that are in play. How do we create a website so that every customer is served? So that's what we did in the first 10 years in the noughties. We sort of started developing integrated e-commerce websites and learning about how businesses can work online. And that workflow is starting to introduce a few little steps that are healthy for the supplier, and also some steps that are helpful for the customer. Instead of relying on unpriced catalogs, which are generally up to the date that they were printed, a website could be fully transparent. The product catalog is live, everyone can see it, so they can log in, browse. And the other thing is the liberty for the customers. They can order 24/7. They don't need to wait for business hours. And in a lot of industries we've worked in hospitality and groceries and news agencies, and that a lot of those guys did transition from ordering during the day to ordering at night, in their quiet time. So the online e-commerce websites really started to become a thing. We noticed online sales just dramatically rise as clients really started promoting their websites. Some new things that came into that is, well, first of all, is it automates the keying of orders on the supplier side. So that's really good. But there's still a double keying issue. The customer has to raise an online order, and then they have to somehow get a purchase order in their system. So often customers actually still do their browsing online, but they revert back to message-based ordering to actually post purchase orders through and email them through, because that's what they need to do for their internal workflows. Now, also in this workflow, we're introducing some other concepts. We've worked with Smart Freight, and Ben, we're really glad that he's here today. We've integrated our Totex platform to Smart Freight, and that's where effectively the e-commerce website can raise an automated consignment based on the delivery address of the order, and then Smart Freight does all the carrier selection. So that's been a really good mechanism and methodology that suppliers have taken advantage of. Now, then, sort of in parallel with e-commerce websites, the other area of computing that's really advanced is EDI. So we're going to get into that next level. Now, EDI is actually generally coupled these days with Punch-Out, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. But Punch-Out and EDI working together create effectively a fairly automated workflow. Now, the reason why Punch-Out exists is actually to do with the tendering process. So let's just get into the next slide and look at how we go from tender to pay. So first of all, in the tendering, we need to throw out our tenders into the market. There's procurement platforms that do that, we effectively go through all of that. What comes out of that is a tender contract, and the tender contract then has to be utilised by all the users of the customer to then place orders all day, every day. So Punch-Out was this mechanism, and you'll see in the next workflow, in the EDI workflow. Dan, thanks. Punch-Out was really this idea where the customer can log into the supplier's online store from their ERP system, browse that online store, add to cart, so they get that sort of online ordering benefit. Then the order is held, and then the online store actually posts a requisition back to the customer's ERP system. So from a supplier side, nothing's happened yet. When that happens, the order requisition is pulled into the ERP system. It goes through an internal workflow to approve that purchase order. Often it goes through departments, and departments have to approve their budgets. And as soon as that approval process is done, a purchase order will pop out from that system. And this is where EDI, Electronic Data Interchange, comes into play. We pull that purchase order into the supplier system. And again, we can do some Smart Freight calculated tracking. We've got GS1 logo there in the tracking thing because Smart Freight are GS1 compliant. So it's really smart technology there. But there's a snag with EDI and Punch-Out, is it's extremely complex to implement. If you're in IT and you're listening in to this sort of seminar, and you've worked in any of these, making these solutions possible, you'll know that it's really a difficult process for customer and supplier to work together and build effectively sandbox systems, and then trial it all and make sure all of the EDI documentation and all the quantities and units and measure line up. And that's where EDI starts to really get tricky. And so for a lot of customers or suppliers, once you get beyond about 5 or 10 relationships under EDI processes, it gets extremely complex to manage. And then, the market sort of respond to this, and we've got sort of value-added networks that act as brokers and aggregators to try and simplify it. But I still haven't seen a very simple EDI implementation in my whole career. So it was this kind of need for electronic data interchange. We really want that. We want end-to-end systems communicating to each other. But we also want the customer browsing experience. The customers want to find products for different suppliers whenever it suits them. And so this is where we say we're trending towards the next level, which is connected commerce. Rather than purchasing from individual supplier websites, we can purchase in a common environment that's a secure environment where we can actually purchase across multiple suppliers and still access our trade relationship pricing, trade rules, but it's now done universally. And also to solve the EDI problem, to do this universally, everyone then is just responsible for integrating their systems into a universal framework. So connected commerce makes that available. Now, the workflow of connected commerce yields a whole bunch of value adds and massive benefits for customers and suppliers. And you know, I'm not going to go through all these points individually, but you can sort of read through that. It's quite a list, and that's really the tip of the iceberg. If everybody is operating in a connected environment, then we sort of can bring together social collaboration with e-commerce trade, with product catalog browsing or product search across supply chain industry level. But there's another thing to this. This is sort of the twist. Connected commerce relationships allow endpoint ERP systems and other business systems to bolt in to an electronic universal supply chain to fully electronically automate a lot of workflow. So where can that automation be done? Well, first of all, tendering can be, reinvented in a way where we're actually posting tenders into electronic marketplaces, and those marketplaces aren't, takes years or multiple years to build. Those marketplaces could be stood up within 10 minutes, and industry actors can pile in, and then tenders can be passed in through to these trusted marketplaces at speed, and then suppliers can respond to those tenders very quickly and automatically in some cases to actually price a tender. So there's work we're doing in the construction space around smart cities, where buildings are now built in 3D with manufacturer components in 3D. We can get schedules off those buildings and push them out into electronic marketplaces. And behind all of that then sits Universal Data Interchange, this ability so that systems can connect once, or you connect once and trade with everyone connected. And that's what we call connected commerce. So from tender to pay, a complete solution. Now, in this workflow for connected commerce, it starts with a universal connected relationship. So a customer should be able to just search the directory of suppliers and find the supplier that they want to trade with, or that they are already trading with, and just hook up. So just kind of like we connect with each other on LinkedIn, businesses can do exactly the same thing. And when we create a universal connected relationship, we anchor the data that is necessary to make that trading relationship work. So naturally, a customer will anchor a supplier code from their ERP to the relationship, and the supplier will anchor the customer's debtor code or customer code to that relationship. Now, once that's in play, then we can have an entirely new workflow where we can log into one common platform. We can search products across multiple suppliers. We can add to shopping baskets for multiple suppliers. So it brings up a whole range of new capability. And this is really what our Squizz platform is designed to do. It's to solve these industry-wide supply chain challenges. Now, it's not just user-driven, it's systems-driven as well. So a system can download the priced catalog from its various suppliers through APIs using that universal connected relationship. Now, the cool thing about this workflow, and we're going to show you some screenshots so it sort of materializes what an in-platform ordering experience in Squizz could look like. But the real key here is those orange documents. When you complete the trade, the purchase orders are raised automatically, the sales orders are raised on the supplier side, and this multi-supplier shopping basket concept means you can have a shopping basket and add products from all sorts of suppliers into the one shopping cart and do a single checkout, and then the orders and purchase orders all split up and fanned out to the relevant suppliers. And back in your system, you get purchase orders for each of those. So this is what we call Universal Data Interchange, UDI. And there's some extra real advantage of this whole model. First of all, we can say that a supplier's inventory is GS1 verified, and that's work that we're doing right now. We're working closely with GS1. We're very excited about the opportunity of using their data standards to add this whole new layer of trust and validation not after the order's received on the supplier side, not when the supplier says, oh God, we can't ship that because that's now a product that's out of stock and we're not going to sell that anymore. When that purchase order lands, the supplier relationship can kick back to the customer and say, hey, your purchase order contains a product we no longer have, rework your order. And it saves all this downstream lost and wasted time trying to do all this follow-up. Now, naturally, you can't get rid of all of that follow-up. So one of the cool things about UDI is that Squizz creates effectively a transaction ledger against the purchase order and sales order. So it's got a transaction reference. And so you can do instant chat at a transaction level. So this is where we come into transaction level collaboration. So it's some really smart stuff. And again, we've got integrated smart freight and, using the GS1 protocols. So it's a very streamlined workflow that can be completely automated. So when we say multi-supplier shareable shopping baskets, one thing that we learned in industry is that a lot of teams of people actually add different products to the same shopping basket. So what we thought is, well, wouldn't it be great if you could share a shopping basket with your teams, and then everyone in the team can create or add to that particular shopping basket for whatever reason. It could be a weekly reorder, it could be a private project, it could be a job, manufacturing job. It doesn't really matter. Okay. So what does it look like? Well, at the moment, Shopping Baskets is in its sort of final stages of development. It'll be progressively released over the next 4 months. But this is an example of, I can go into Squizz, I can go to Shopping Baskets, create a basket. When I do that, a basket comes up. I then basically select a supplier from my existing supply chain relationships. It picks up the fact that I'm linked to a web account. And then I can search for products across the supplier's catalog. The pricing that's displayed is according to that supplier relationship. So that includes price levels, contract level discounts, any other deals or things that overlay that on top of that relationship, all coming out of the supplier's ERP system. So once I've done that, I've created my cart, added all the items, and I can proceed to checkout. Now, when I go to checkout, this is the real smart feature. This is actually why we built the platform in the first place back in 2005 when we conceived of this. The customer can now just tick that box and say, well, bring some purchase order back into my system. And then once they submit that order and that order goes off to the supplier, it'll create, just before it does that, it creates the purchase orders into my system, and then it will link that purchase order number to that supplier sales order. So it's fully interlinked. So have a think about your business and just look at what sort of levels your business is at right now, or which sort of level you're at. And there's no kind of right level to be at. You're just at the level that works for your business. And, it may be a case that you might even think that you're at a connected commerce level and you may be using some connected commerce initiatives. So, love to see what sort of results that you've got for us. I think everyone's still voting or thinking, and you might have to just, check in, go, do we have a website? Can we sell on that website? Do we have EDI? I don't know. Maybe we don't. Maybe we do. So you might need to even take this question back into your organization after this presentation. All right, let's have a look at the results. Okay. This is a number that I expected to see. 59% are still in message-based e-commerce. Now, this is a really important point because in the next part of this presentation, that will show how that correlates to real data that we have seen across the websites and platforms that we have. All right, let's move on. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the current state of play. COVID-19 slowing the world economy. It's making it a bit tricky for manufacturers to work at the same pace that they're normally used to working at. There's issues around the docks. There's issues with lead times and quarantine. There's a potential second wave in Europe, all of that. So there's lots of challenges that are being placed on the local supply chains that we're now going to start seeing revealed over the next 6 months. So suppliers are saying inventories are starting to fall. Sourcing stock is getting harder. The restrictions is, here in Melbourne, I've just, hands down to the suppliers and distributors that have managed those COVID restrictions in their warehouses and managed all the logistics around it. It's quite tricky. But even further afield, everyone has had to deal with this in some way. It's had an impact. But it's also created a trend where wholesale distributors are starting to go, well, we've got to find other channels to sell online. So there's been a rush to marketplace platforms like eBay and Amazon and so on. So that trend won't also abate either. Now let's have a look at some numbers. So we decided to look at sort of the e-commerce websites that we host, and we were interested into seeing, well, what percentage of active customer accounts log in online and do research versus the ones that actually place online orders. So for companies less than 150K of monthly online sales, that's the numbers, which is quite surprising that only about 11% are ordering online. When we get into the next size of organizations, you can see that one particular organization has nearly 80% of their customers ordering online or logging in online, and it sort of trends upwards. You get about 20 to 30% of customers placing orders online. But that whole the light blue area on both these charts is the bit that we're actually really interested in. They're either customer accounts that are active but are not being served, so they're underserved, or they're customer accounts that are still doing message-based ordering. So you can kind of see here that still message-based ordering is nearly the ruler of the roost, and the sophistication of our supply chain industries is not as high as we think they are. But also, there's some real positive news about this, is that there's so much scope to serve customers better. So, there's probably a lot of orders that are not being served. So there's some really positive information around that. This is kind of the I call this the Holy Grail diagram. It's if you're in the shoes of a supplier or a customer, if you get rid of all the manual processing around ordering, this is just transactions. That would be the greatest outcome for the business, because everything improves. Accuracy improves, customer satisfaction improves, sales improve, profitability improves. Like, it's all positive. Now, we've seen e-commerce start to eat up the lower end of that, because smaller customers are kind of happy to do the double keying. Bigger customers are not. Direct EDI is difficult and complex. It's this middle market that connected commerce really goes to work on, is to how do we get the good quality account customers ordering repeatedly through smart channels like connected commerce, and that will then save a lot of great potential, or create a lot of great potential for both parties. So the other thing that you will notice in COVID is this actually was starting to trend before COVID, but the COVID has really just accelerated this, is that we have now started to shift and get adjusted to this concept of what we call the anywhere economy, or the anywhere shift. What does that mean? Well, it means let's live anywhere, let's collaborate anywhere, let's manage from anywhere, let's design from anywhere, let's learn from anywhere, let's do it from anywhere. And technology and smart technologies allow this anywhere economy to happen. But then we also need some better paradigms for the anywhere economy to work. And beautifully, connected commerce is a fantastic underpinning of the desire for working from anywhere, or doing whatever you want from anywhere. But connected commerce also requires a whole value chain, a new set of values, particularly around privacy and security. You want to be, if you're working from home, you want to be accessing your supplier systems. Your suppliers want to know that you are the right person accessing, those systems and placing those orders. So trust and security across lots of different disconnected boundaries is now starting to become a very big, important issue and topic for companies, particularly as a lot of their staff now work remotely. Now, with that in play, with that value framework in play, we can have all these technologies wrap around and dovetail into this connected commerce paradigm. All right, so connected commerce is actually for procurement, there's a coupling here of the Internet of Relationships, Procurement Intelligence, and Universal Data Interchange, all centered around the product catalog. And the product catalog doesn't necessarily mean physical products. It could be services, could be digital products, but it's just what you sell. So let's have a look at the Internet of Relationships. As I said right at the beginning, I personally am connected into a commercial world. So, you know, when you go to a trade show, that this is sort of the physical manifestation of what we've now created digitally, a secure, encrypted, vaulted relationship ecosystem where people are connected to their companies are connected to other companies, their companies are part of marketplaces, and people are connected to other people so that they are all, you know, professionally and privately connected in some way. So there's a huge advantage to that, is that we have identity at an individual level, we have identity at an organization level. And then naturally we want to bolt our systems into that framework. We want to, you know, link our software, our ERP systems, our, you know, digital service platforms like Smart Freight. We want them to bolt into our Internet of Relationships. So this is where the Universal Data Interchange occurred, or has sort of really changed the game. Procurement bottlenecks is the next thing, is that there's countless suppliers I've spoken to said when our staff are glued up on phones, their intelligence is not being fully leveraged, because they could be making the product catalog better. They could be looking at new trends. They could be seeing what's going on across demand. So procurement bottlenecks then leads us to a new level of procurement intelligence. And procurement intelligence is all about let's reveal the action on the field inside private connected marketplaces between customers and suppliers. So suppliers can see forward guidance because they've got access to better information that's telling them about future demand. Customers can be informed what suppliers are about to bring online, new products, new features, new capability. Suppliers can get feedback directly from customers. You know, did they get their goods? Did they not get their goods? Was it, you know, did they have problems along the way? So procurement intelligence then takes people out of sort of the mundane day-to-day activities and applies their intelligence to do better things and more capable things, to start getting back to that blue area I was talking about. So if our next poll question is, how do you relate to your product catalog? In other words, how does your company think about their product catalog? If you're a large distributor, you know, you'd be thinking lots of products, thousands of products, and, you know, think about it in terms of, is your product catalog, you know, seen by the organization as the heart, the glue of how the organization beats? Or is it sort of, you know, an afterthought? Is it sort of something that, well, it's there and I guess we know what we sell? Or is it, you know, I didn't know, do we have a product catalog, or where is the product catalog? And the other one there is the product catalog is there, and it's a fantastic product catalog, but it's in the people's heads. There's no right or wrong answer, by the way. It's just to provoke your thinking about how you relate to the most essential data element of your business, which is fairly critical. So we'll just see if we can get some results in on that one. Yeah, that's cool. That's kind of cool. We're starting to see this trend line. If I ran this poll about 10 years ago, it would be sort of more in the lower part, but it's starting to get there where businesses are really seeing their product data is actually the key differentiator. And it's kind of ironic, but our most successful clients in e-commerce are the ones that have brilliant product data, the ones that are totally engaged with what's going on in their client community online, and they have that mindset. But it's also, there's room for others to really sort of start thinking about this. You know, if they start thinking about a data-centric view of their business, then, you know, there's a lot of growth potential there that's untapped. All right. So let's look at the final part. Where are we heading? The future, and what does that look like? Now we're going to look at this future from our perspective. why we built Squizz in the first place. It's to create this possible future. So it's very oriented to what we're actually doing. First of all, we create this common universal platform that has both internal boundaries and external linked-in entities. So that's the software systems that businesses use. So that those black dots there are, all right, well, we need to connect software from our companies into a secure framework. And in our companies, we want our systems to then be utilized. They're already utilized by people. We need to bring the people in. And then we need the people to be professionally networked with each other. So that's, again, another sort of internet relationships. This thing called the connector, or this ability to connect universally into this common fabric, is that icon there, that black icon. That's so that I can link a connected system. I can link an ERP into this. I can link a connected service like Smart Freight. I can link GS1 validation services. So, so I want to bring all this in. I want the people to be in, and then I want our industry to be in. And so we sort of roll this up and we say, well, hey, this is now starting to look like a connected marketplace. And when we look at a real world example, we've got a client, Q Imaging, they sell to their customers. They're all sitting inside the platform. They've got websites that bolt into their connected relationships. They've got ERPs that bolt into their connected relationships. They're now creating their own connected world inside the platform and starting to really achieve virtually 100% full automation of trade. Now, marketplaces don't live in silos. They all work together. So there's oceans of marketplaces. And so our next frontier for 2021-22 is the build out of marketplaces in the connected commerce world. So it's a very exciting endeavor. Now, Squizz has been around it's been live since 2016. It's processed about 65,000 transactions. And, it's proven. It's working from companies running really big systems like SAP to companies running small systems like MYOB. Now is the time to start taking a look. And the best way to take a look at something like I love doing is I like signing up and getting my hands on it. So Squizz can sometimes feel a little bit daunting, but when you actually sign up and you get in, you might find that actually, hang on, what is really here? We're doing a lot more tutorials and help guides as we speak to try and really connect the dots for people. But the best way is sign up, get into it. When you get in, one thing is identity. So you have this thing called an invitation code. It's effectively your global Squizz identity. That invitation code can go on your email signature, can go on business cards. In the future, our apps will do QR code, connecting with people. So it's really important that when you meet people over Squizz, you can hand out that code, because there's one critical thing about the platform is everyone has to approve everyone's connection requests. So there's my invite code. If you want to connect with me, sign up and connect with me, and I'll approve that request. And now we can go and do some collaboration, but we can do some more things down the track. All right. That's just what you don't have to have an invitation code. If you've got someone's email, you put an email address in there and you send that request off, and Squizz will send them a link, and then that'll kick off the process for them to sign up and then connect with you. The next thing is to register your organization. On that same homepage, there's a register organization button. Register your company. When you register your company, by default, it's classified as unverified and untrusted. So it's not allowed to sell on Squizz, but you can register your organization and start looking through how to set it up. And again, there's a help button down there, or a help link on the footer. There's lots of documentation to get you started. So what we really want people to do right now across different industries is start thinking, well, if we had this connected commerce framework in play, what kind of capabilities would we want to do at an industry level or a market level? And how would we want to pass data around through all these secure channels or these secure connected relationships? Next year, we start heading into smart cities, smart assets, and then that effectively allows us to create IoT assets and bolt them into our connected ecosystems as well. And there's some real exciting things that are happening in that space. So I think that's a wrap. And I just really thank you for listening in for this time, and appreciate all of your contribution in this Q&A session coming up. And thank you very much.
Hey, Glenn, I found that really interesting. I think you've done a great job. It's a complicated thing that you've built, and you've articulated it really quite simplistically. I'd love to see the, the time lapse for those 3 procurement models, because I think it would blow everyone away. From the limited time I spent working in government, the process of getting an order out and a purchase order raised.
Yeah.
it was measured in weeks or months, not days or hours. So, hey, so we're going to open up a panel session now. I'd like to invite Ben Woodward. Now, he's one of the busiest men around at the moment. Last mile and delivery has been put under extraordinary pressure. Ben is the global channel manager for Smart Freight, and I understand you've done some integration there. So we're going to open up a couple of questions. I'll start you off. I would invite anyone on the call, please, if you've got questions, and I can see them coming in now through chat, I'll throw them out. We've got 15 minutes or so. Glenn, just to start us off, GS1 are in, we like this open framework of interoperable systems and, standards-based, making sure that the playing field is level, keep things open. It's great to see you guys looking at exploring the National Product Catalogue and verified by GS1. How do you guys manage that level playing field in essentially what is a closed system?
Yeah, correct. This is where the what we call our connected partners framework comes into play. So connected partners are software developers, systems consultants, and they can actually connect systems and then make those connected systems available in the platform. That's a program we're working with right now. So the idea is that they can bolt into the platform, and they then also can derive revenue from value-added activity that goes through their integrated systems or services. That's really one key thing, is that we shouldn't really, as a platform provider, dictate that capability. If anyone's got capability, they want to bring it into the architecture, they can. That's one thing, and that sort of offsets, sort of what Apple did with the app developers. They created the app community, allowed the developers, sort of gave them a sandbox to work in, and then they developed apps. They released them on the App Store. But the snag with the app model really is just that it's generally a fixed price model if you're going to work with just selling apps, or then you have to create your own user subscription model, and that's also really complex to do. Well, Squizz sort of solves both of these issues. It has a universal trading currency in a sense. We don't call it a currency, we call them trading tokens, because they're technically not tradable for day-to-day transactions. But the idea is that developers and app developers can access that recurring stream if whatever they've developed is valuable and in reuse all the time. So we think value-added activity is kind of the next generation of kind of income for connected services and systems.
Yeah, look, that sounds great. So you're essentially creating markets within the markets. One of the things that and this is a question that's come in, Pete, thank you. One of the things that GS1 often finds challenging is when we're supporting e-commerce marketplaces, Alibaba, Amazon, etc., is maintaining the stock level accuracy. So when you do an integration, say with Xero, how can you be sure that you're getting that stock accuracy such that when someone's placing an order, it's actually there to be fulfilled?
Yeah, that's right. Well, those who are on Xero would know that Xero's sort of inventory management system is, it's designed to be fairly basic. It's not a really advanced warehouse management system. But there's companies, and we have customers that use Xero for accounting, and then they use things like DataPal for warehouse management software, and then they have the two work together. The advantage of the way the universal APIs work is that you can bolt Xero in for accounting workflows, and then you can bolt DataPal in for all inventory management, pricing, and stock availability. So from Squizz's world, it's like it can have multiple sources of data where it grabs it from. So, but if you want to run a simple zero based sort of inventory ledger, then you can just use the zero adapter to do that. Or if you want that more complexity, you can build that complexity yourself.
Thanks, Glenn. Question for Ben. Just sort of a bit of a comment on the experience that you've had with Squizz and working through an integration. Do you mind telling your story, Ben?
Yeah, I guess, look, in a snapshot, Smart Freight is a multi-carrier shipping platform. So you bring your relationships with your transport providers and seamlessly integrate that into Smart Freight, but then interconnectivity into Squizz gives you that ultimate EDI across multiple platforms. The thing I would say about Squizz is think about it as having multiple one-to-one relationships outside of Squizz. Once you're inside the Squizz ecosystem, you're almost immediately connected to all those other systems and connectors like Smart Freight. So for us, where we saw Glenn touch on some of the mistakes and rekeying errors, the orders come straight from the ERP through Squizz into Smart Freight. Smart Freight can consign those, print labels, and then return the information back into the ERP and also Squizz. So people sending things B2B, B2C have that visibility of where their shipments are going, but also we can provide visibility to the end customer to see where their shipment is across the delivery lifecycle. So being tightly integrated into Squizz is an advantage for us because people on the platform can almost immediately begin to use Smart Freight and ship their goods.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And I think there's a question that's just come in around, I'll maybe throw it to both of you. It's to do with industrial hacking and ransomware and issues around security and trust. And I think everyone is very conscious of that trust model at the moment. So how does, what are the security advantages that Squizz are focusing on to manage those risks?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. I'm glad it's been asked, actually. One of the most critical things in any sort of marketplace platform is how do the individual actors in the platform gain protection when they're integrating their back-end, business systems. This was actually a fundamental problem that took us 6 years to kind of solve. And the way we solved it was we created a social network that was built from encryption from the get-go. So the social network itself is in an encrypted architecture. And what that means is that when you sign up to Squizz, you get an encrypted vault. When you register your organization, it has its own encrypted vault. And it creates an interlock between the vaulted keys using the encryption keys of those entities. Now, when you want to connect a system into your organization on Squizz, you have to then put those encryption keys for your organization into the other end, into the other software, so that you have a full private encrypted link to your organization vault in Squizz. Now, Squizz then has other layers of encryption for some data and conversations in Squizz, instant chat conversations, they're all encrypted, they're vaults as well. Smart assets are vaults. So you've got this vaulted architecture. So it doesn't mean, so one of the biggest risks with security is that you have the Trojan horse attack. Someone from the inside gets access to to everyone's data. So the whole idea is that even our programmers can't just go and, access people's data, unless they're part of those vaults. So that's one of the primary security mechanisms to try and, really combat and curb that. So, ultimately that the data sovereignty is retained by whoever owns that data and is revealing that data to the world.
Yeah, and Peter, to touch on that, I was looking at some statistics, but hacking and cyber criminals, it's focusing more and more on supply chain and logistic companies. And there have been some recent media reports about different companies struggling with that, but it's some ridiculous amount of, some ridiculous percentage, like 30 or 40% of companies worldwide, hackers and cyber criminals are tackling and trying to weasel into the supply chain just to disrupt and then gain access and then use ransomware and try and make some money. So very interesting and a great question, because hacking and cyber security in this connected world as we are today is absolutely paramount.
Yeah, Another thing that we did to address it was we built this trusted status mechanism. So when you register your organization, it's default unverified, untrusted. You have to actually make your organization trusted. And we put a cost on that, it's $300. So you have to buy $300 of trading tokens so you can do that. At the moment, trading token, when you sign up to Squizz, when you register your organization, those trading tokens are free. Sorry, you get $300 of free trading tokens. So the trusted status registration is free for now. But the point is we actually do a background organization check. We do an ASIC check. We check that the people connected to the organization are the directors of that organization. So they actually have to be in the platform and have sovereignty over their organization. So we do quite a lot of checks before we give that green tick seal of approval. Yep, they're verified and trusted. And
Smart Freight has been through that.
Well done. Actually, just as a comment, I think this whole issue of verified credentials and trust is a big issue for GS1 these days as well. Is that, you know, who we trust yesterday may not be someone who we trust tomorrow. So this notion of, you know, point in time credentials is something of the past. You know, so it's really exciting to see these new models where we're getting a proof of life essentially. Pulse all the time. I wanted to come back just to question around freight. You know, there are many carriers in market. How does Squizz manage, you know, the calculation of freight if you've got multiple carriers? Is it currently possible to work out what the order value is plus the freight based on whoever you choose to be a last mile deliverer?
Yeah, this kind of where Smart Freight's cool because Squizz has what we call order surcharge rules that you set up for your organization. So you have this tree of rules that Squizz will work through for every sales order that you receive. And the rules then can kick off a quote request through the Smart Freight connection and say, okay, well, I know this is going to Queensland. I know it's going to Brisbane. I want to now go and say, hey, Smart Freight, give me back some options of some priced options for the different carriers that company has selected in their and set up in their Smart Freight profile. So every company, and this is one thing about B2B or freight, what I call freight aggregators in one sense is that Smart Freight says you can have your carrier accounts. You know, you got your relationship with your carriers. We're not going to interrupt that. You set up your carrier accounts in Smart Freight, and then Squizz can leverage the smart rules that Smart Freight has to go and work those things out. Now, you've got a couple of choices. You can say, well, I want to allow the customers to select the best deal, or we're going to just make the selection on their behalf. And then when the customer is accepted in that checkout process, then we'll just go and book the consignment. So they can either select it if you want to give them that choice, or we just throw it straight through to Smart Freight and it works out using its own routing rules what the best solution is. And so we get it pre-priced. And so we put that into the purchase order, or I guess the order review page, so the customer can see what they're going to pay on freight.
Hey, Glenn, sorry, Ben, we've got a minute to go, so just a quick short response, and then I'll do the wrap.
No, it's almost like that Smart Freight is the engine working inside a Squizz. So that's it.
Look, that's fantastic. And look, I think that's a nice place to close. There was one other question, and if there are others coming through the Q&A, to Glenn's point, is the Squizz team and Ben will answer those to the best their ability. I think this has been a really exciting session. I am genuinely excited about the innovative new talent that's coming in and looking at the supply chain challenges. It's a completely different, it's the fusion of the best of what we currently do and some really innovative, modern, connected commerce concepts. My job is just to close quickly to thank Glenn and for Ben for the great input. I think it's been really informative. Encourage those of you who can please complete the post-webinar survey. Big thanks to Squizz. Certainly take up their offer to have a look at what they do. They're providing some login credentials, etc. But as Glenn mentioned, you don't need those in order to evaluate their offering. So to all the attendees who've dialed in today, we hope you found the seminar useful. Again, before you leave, take a few minutes just to complete the survey. A copy of the webinar, I believe, has gone straight out to Facebook through recording. So it's available for your peers if they haven't been able to join you. If you do have any more questions, feel free to direct them to Glenn or to Ben, or send them through to GS1 if you want more information about what great organisations like Squizz are doing to support the GS1 membership in Australia and internationally. Thank you all for your time. Wish you well with the rest of the day, and good morning.